Two teams chasing perfection, a 40-year-old quarterback defying time in purple, the most controversial fourth down call in NFL history, the most audacious onside kick in Super Bowl history, and a city that needed a championship more than any city had ever needed one before. The 2009 NFL season had everything. It was chaotic, dramatic, and full of storylines that kept fans glued to their screens from September all the way through February. And it ended with one of the most emotionally resonant Super Bowl victories the league has ever produced. This is the story of the 2009 NFL season, the year the New Orleans Saints won it all. The landscape heading into 2009. Before a single snap was taken in 2009, the storylines were already piling up. The Pittsburgh Steelers were coming off their dramatic Super Bowl XL3 victory over the Arizona Cardinals, capped by Santonio Holmes' toe-tapping touchdown catch in the corner of the end zone. With Troy Polamalu patrolling the secondary, James Harrison terrorizing quarterbacks, and Ben Roethlisberger firmly established as a clutch postseason performer, Pittsburgh was ready to defend. But looming over the entire AFC was a return. Tom Brady had missed all of 2008 with a torn ACL, and now he was back just 2 years removed from his historic 5-0 touchdown MVP season. New England was immediately installed as the Super Bowl favorites, and rightfully so. As long as Brady was healthy, the Patriots were dangerous, and Peyton Manning was still Peyton Manning. Coming off yet another MVP caliber year with the Colts, and ready to make another deep January run. In the NFC, Eli Manning's Giants were built around a dominant defensive front, and were coming off a 12-4 season. The Eagles had made perhaps the most controversial signing of the offseason, bringing in Michael Vick just months out of prison. The Cowboys, loaded with talent and armed with a brand new billion-dollar stadium, were hoping to recapture the form that had made them 13-3 inches 2007. But the most fascinating storyline in the entire league heading into 2009 was in Minnesota. After months of speculation, retirement, and reversal, Brett Favre, at 40 years old, signed with the Vikings in early August. And this wasn't just a reclamation project. Minnesota had a 24-year-old Adrian Peterson in his prime, a capable defense, and genuine Super Bowl aspirations. Favre wasn't there to manage games. He was there to win one. And we can't forget New Orleans. The Saints had the highest scoring offense in football in 2008. With Drew Brees coming off his first 5,000-yard season, Sean Payton's scheme could carve through defenses at any moment. But an 8-8 record and a bottom-tier defense raised serious questions about whether this team could translate regular season fireworks into playoff success. The 2009 season was loaded before it even started. September, early chaos and early statements. Week 1 set the tone for everything that followed. On Monday Night Football, Tom Brady made his long-awaited return in New England against the Bills. For 3.5 quarters, it didn't look quite right. The timing was off, the rhythm wasn't there. But Brady being Brady, he found his footing when it mattered, throwing 2 fourth-quarter touchdown passes to Ben Watson to steal a 25-24 win. Crisis averted. The Patriots were back, but Brady's drama was almost overshadowed by what was happening in New Orleans. The Saints came out of the gates like a team possessed 45 points on Detroit in Week 1. 48 on Philadelphia in Week 2. They were 4-0 after the first month, and it wasn't even particularly close. They had company at the top, though. Brett Favre was turning back the clock in Minnesota, not just managing games, but making throws downfield, extending plays, and elevating everyone around him. With Adrian Peterson carrying the ground game, Sidney Rice emerging as a legitimate deep threat. In a defense that forced turnovers in bunches, the Vikings were also 4-0 and looked every bit like a Super Bowl contender. Peyton Manning was doing what Peyton Manning always did, throwing for 300+ yards seemingly every week, operating the Colts' machine with mechanical precision on the way to a 4-0 start, and perhaps most surprisingly, the Denver Broncos were also 4-0, a team many had written off after trading away Jay Cutler in the offseason. New head coach Josh McDaniels had installed Kyle Orton at quarterback in a controversial reset, but a suffocating defense was making it work. Their season highlight came in Week 1, when Brandon Stokely caught a tip pass and raced 87 yards for a miracle touchdown in the final seconds to beat the Bengals. On the other end of the spectrum, the defending AFC's top seed Tennessee Titans opened the year with 4 straight losses. The dynasty had crumbled almost overnight. October, the races take shape. October brought more chaos. The Saints hosted the previously unbeaten Giants in Week 6 and dismantled them 48-27. announcing to the rest of the NFC that New Orleans was not just a regular season team. They followed that with 46 points against Miami. By the midpoint of the season, the Saints were 7-0. Favre traveled to Lambeau Field in Week 8 and hung 38 points on his former team. 2 wins over the Packers in one season, the Vikings were 6-1, and the Brett Favre revenge tour was very much on schedule. The Colts were doing what everyone expected, winning quietly and efficiently. Their month was highlighted by a 42-6 obliteration of the Rams. Manning barely broke a sweat, and then there was New England's signature moment of October. In a snow-covered Week 6 game against the Titans, the team that had embarrassed them and gone 13-3 the year before, Brady threw 5 touchdown passes in a single quarter. Final score, 59-0. The Patriots had fully arrived. But perhaps the biggest surprise of October was Cincinnati. The Bengals, picked by almost nobody to contend, were quietly putting together one of the most unexpected seasons in the league, knocking off Pittsburgh on a last-second Carson Palmer touchdown, then beating Baltimore the same way. Marvin Lewis had this team believing. The Broncos, meanwhile, continued their shocking run to 6-0, beating both Dallas and New England in the same month. But cracks were forming. Questions about the offense were getting louder, and the schedule was about to get harder. November, the most controversial play of the decade. November gave us the game of the year. In Week 10, the 8-0 Colts traveled to New England for what had become the NFL's most reliable must-watch matchup, Manning versus Brady. New England controlled most of the game. They led 3-4-21 inches the fourth quarter after 2 Randy Moss touchdowns. Manning answered with a scoring drive to cut it to 34-28, and then came the decision that people are still arguing about today. With just over 2 minutes remaining, Bill Belichick, the greatest coach in NFL history, a man whose entire philosophy is built on calculated risk, faced 4th and 2 on his own 8-yard line. The conventional move is to punt. You make Manning go 70 yards to beat you. Instead, Belichick went for it. The pass to Kevin Falk came up a yard short. Manning had a short field and 4 plays to work with. Reggie Wayne caught the go-ahead touchdown. Colts win, 35-34. The decision was immediately radioactive, called reckless, arrogant, and inexcusable by some, called analytically sound and defensible by others. The debate is never fully settled. Meanwhile, New Orleans just kept winning. They beat the Patriots in Week 10 as Drew Brees threw 5 touchdowns against New England's defense, the same defense that had just held Manning to under 300 yards. The Saints were 10-0. The Colts were 10-0. 2 teams chasing perfection simultaneously. It hadn't happened like this in years. December decisions and dissents. As December arrived, the Colts sat at 14-0 with perfection within reach. And then came another decision. In Week 16 against the Jets, Indianapolis led 15-10 late in the third quarter. Peyton Manning walked to the sideline. The starters were pulled. New York stormed back to win 29-15. The Colts had voluntarily walked away from history, choosing rest and health over the chance at an undefeated season. They lost again in Week 17, finishing 14-2. Manning won his 4th MVP, but the debate about what could have been lingered, and some in the locker room weren't fully on board with the decision either. New Orleans had their own stumble. After going 13-0, the Saints lost 3 of their final 4 games, including to the Cowboys in Week 15, entering the playoffs at 13-3. Still the NFC's top seed, but suddenly looking vulnerable after months of seeming invincible. The story of December also belonged to Chris Johnson. After Tennessee had started 0-6, Johnson had become an unstoppable force, 228 yards against Jacksonville, followed by 5 more 100-plus yard games. He finished the season with 2,006 rushing yards, a new NFL record, and the Offensive Player of the Year award. The Titans finished 8-8 and missed the playoffs, but CJ2K gave football fans something to remember. And Dallas delivered the clutch performance of the regular season's final week, shutting out Philadelphia 24-0 to claim the NFC East title in a game where everything was on the line. They'd meet again 1 week later in the playoffs. The playoffs chaos at every turn. Wild Card Weekend delivered immediately. The highest scoring game was Arizona and Green Bay, a wild shootout that saw the Cardinals blow a 31-10 lead. Aaron Rodgers orchestrate a historic playoff debut to force overtime before a Michael Adams strip sack that Carlos Dansby scooped and scored to end one of the most chaotic playoff games in NFL history. The Ravens dismantled New England, and the most stunning result of the weekend, Ray Rice scoring on an 8-3-yard touchdown on the very first play of the game, and Tom Brady throwing 3 interceptions in a loss that sent New England home early. The Patriots' dynasty's title window was narrowing. Dallas crushed Philadelphia 34-14, with Felix Jones putting the game away with a 7-3-yard touchdown run. The rematch had delivered a completely different result, and the Jets, powered by Darrelle Revis's shutdown coverage all season, eliminated San Diego 17-14 with a Sean Green touchdown to advance to the divisional round. In the divisional round, the Colts handled business against Baltimore, Manning finding Austin Collie and Reggie Wayne for late second-quarter touchdowns, and the defense shutting the door from there. Minnesota dismantled Dallas 34-3. Adrian Peterson and Brett Favre combining to make the Cowboys look overmatched from the opening drive. And New Orleans dispatched Arizona 4-5, 14 inches a dominant performance that erased any lingering doubts about the Saints' readiness for a title run. The NFC Championship between Minnesota and New Orleans was everything anyone could have hoped for. Peterson ran for 122 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Vikings outgained the Saints significantly and controlled the game for long stretches. But 2 second-half interceptions and 2 Peterson fumbles kept New Orleans alive. With 5 minutes left and the game tied at 28, Peterson punched in his 3rd touchdown to give Minnesota the lead. And then Brett Favre, in what should have been his defining moment, took a hit and threw an interception in Saints territory with the clock running down when a simple run would have put the Vikings in field goal range to win. The Saints escaped to overtime. A field goal ended it. New Orleans was going to the Super Bowl, and Favre's final legacy moment had slipped through his fingers in the cruelest way possible. Super Bowl XLiv, the onside kick heard round the world. Super Bowl XLIV, Indianapolis Colts versus New Orleans Saints. 2 of the best teams in football, and a city, New Orleans, that needed this more than any championship city in recent memory. 4 years after Hurricane Katrina had devastated the Gulf Coast and left the city's identity in pieces, the Saints, carrying the Lombardi Trophy back to the French Quarter, meant something far beyond football. The first half belonged to Indianapolis. Manning orchestrated a 9-6-yard touchdown drive. The Colts led 10-6 at halftime, settling into exactly the kind of controlled, mistake-free game they wanted to play. The Saints were moving the ball but failing to finish drives. Everything looked like it was trending toward a Colts championship, and then Sean Payton called for the ambush. To open the second half, instead of kicking deep, the Saints executed a surprise onside kick, the first time in Super Bowl history a team had attempted one before the fourth quarter. The ball took a fortunate bounce off a Colts player's hands, and New Orleans recovered. The stadium shifted. The momentum shifted. Everything shifted. Drew Brees immediately went to work on the short field, driving the Saints to a touchdown to take their first lead of the game. The Colts answered to retake the lead, but the vibe had changed permanently. New Orleans was playing with a confidence and a freedom that hadn't been there in the first half. A field goal gave the Saints a 23-17 lead. Then Indianapolis kicker Matt Stover missed a 5-1-yarder with 11 minutes left. New Orleans went on a 9-play drive breeze, completing 7 of 7 passes, capped by a touchdown and a successful 2-point conversion that pushed the lead to 7. And then came the finishing blow. Manning drove the Colts into Saints territory, looking for the first down that would keep the drive alive. He targeted Reggie Wayne on 3rd and 5. Cornerback Tracy Porter read it perfectly, stepped in front of the throw, and returned the interception 74 yards for a touchdown. Just like that, a potential tie became a 2-score game. It was over. Final score, Saints 31, Colts 17. Drew Brees completed 32 of 39 passes and was named Super Bowl MVP in one of the most efficient championship performances the game has ever seen. And in the moments after the final whistle, Brees stood on the field with his infant son on his shoulder, confetti falling around them in an image that captured everything the city of New Orleans had been waiting for. The 2009 NFL season gave us everything. An unbeaten race between 2 powerhouses, the 4th and 2 that broke the internet before the internet broke things. The most audacious call in Super Bowl halftime history. A 4-0-year-old Brett Favre breaking records and nearly dragging Minnesota to the title before an interception ended it all in heartbreak. And at the center of it all, a team from a city that had been through the unimaginable, led by a quarterback playing the best football of his life, making a play call at halftime that nobody else in the league would have been brave enough to call. The New Orleans Saints didn't just win the Super Bowl in 2009. They gave their city something back that no one could take away. What was your favorite moment from the 2009 season? Drop it in the comments below. Subscribe for more NFL history breakdowns, and I'll see you next time.